So without further ado, let's dive right into post-game reactions to Monday Night Football. So let's see. The Raiders defeated the Green Bay Packers 17-13. It was a pretty good game, I'd say. You know what? Drew and I will both tell you that we were both a little apprehensive coming into this game, especially with how our team's been looking against, the Steelers and the Bills and, the entire dysfunction of our team up until this point. And again, we are not going to sugarcoat it. We are diehard Raiders fans, but we're also realistic and we're very open and honest about our issues with the team. Specifically, our biggest issue right now is Josh McDaniels, without a doubt, in my opinion, and I believe Drew has the same opinion as well. Josh McDaniels is probably the reason why the Raiders will not have any sort of success that, we are hoping for in terms of playoffs or Super Bowls or anything like that. I mean, we have basically the faces of the Raiders in Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, Max Crosby, all voicing their displeasure with how things are going. And if I'm being honest, it sounds like it's just a continuation from the first season that Josh McDaniels took over, where it doesn't seem like anyone's happy and, this, that, and the other. So I'm sure everyone's pretty much aware of how our feelings are regarding Josh McDaniels. But regardless, though, at least on this Monday Night Football game, is they came out on top. They had a pretty good lead in the first half. They played some pretty good ball. And then in the second half, they let the lead slip. And then they got it right back in the fourth quarter, which was really good considering that the Raiders normally aren't great coming from behind. But I think the Green Bay Packers just struggled offensively and couldn't really find a rhythm. Credit Max Crosby and that pressure defense. They only sacked Jordan Love twice, but the two times that he was sacked, or at least the pressures, it really gave Jordan Love happy feet. He didn't look very comfortable in the pocket. And truthfully, too, the Packers receivers relatively were held in somewhat of check. I mean, Christian Watson was the only receiver that had more than 30 yards. He had 91 to be exact. And, almost all of that came off of a huge chunk play of 77 yards on one reception. He was targeted 6 times, and you have Luke Musgrave that had 34 receiving yards following that. So, I want to say that this was a pretty good job by the Raiders secondary for keeping the Green Bay Packers in check. A.J. Dillon probably was the most productive Packer. He had 76 rushing yards and a rushing TD that he got in the third quarter. But I think one of the big storylines of this game is the Raiders and, the defense that they displayed, which was, I got to be honest, shocking. I was not certain that the Raiders had that in them. Coming into this season, they've only had 1 takeaway, and in this game, they caused 3 takeaways, 3 interceptions. 2 of them were to Robert Chaplain, and one of them was to Robertson, which basically closed out the game. So this is definitely a defensive win for the Raiders. There was a couple of times it looked like the Raiders were going to completely give this game away. One of the parts that made me feel like that is in the second half. I believe it was our opening drive of the second half in the third quarter, and Jimmy G just throws an errant interception that clearly went right to the defender. And I'm not sure if maybe the defense that he was reading was completely wrong, but obviously Jimmy G giving up an interception in a crucial time at the start of the second half basically was not the greatest start. And credit to our defense for, standing strong. And I believe on that one, they only gave up, they gave up a touchdown, unfortunately. But for the remainder of the second half, they only gave up a field goal. So they only gave up 10 total points in the third quarter. And then they had a shutout in the fourth, which was great. But Jimmy G threw it 31 times, just a little over 200 yards. He was sacked 3 times, though. And Josh Jacobs had a pretty good running game. I mean, 20 carries, which was probably his biggest output of the season so far. 69 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. But he had 5 receptions for 20 yards. So he was definitely in the passing game. So if you had him in fantasy, you definitely got all those benefits and, those points from those yards and receptions and that late rushing touchdown. And, another thing that was kind of surprising within this game for the Raiders was the I want to say the distribution of the targets in the passing. It's kind of funny because this week Drew and I were playing each other in fantasy football. We were playing each other in his ESPN league and my NFL league. And in my NFL league, I had Devontae Adams was my only other player that was left, and I was down by, I want to say I was down by 16 points, 18 or 16 points, and Adams got off kind of to a slow start. He only had one reception all the entire first half. And then, honestly, in the second half, he was still held in check. He still only had 3 more receptions after that. And, if you had him in fantasy and you were hoping for him to have a huge game, I think he only came away with 8.5 points. And for me, that wasn't nearly enough. I needed at least a touchdown in there to even beat Drew in the NFL league. But in his ESPN league, I was down, I think, only by a couple of points, and I had both Myers and Adams starting, and Myers by himself got me 20 points or some number of that effect. And of course, I got Adams 8 points. So I ended up winning that. So him and I have split in our 2 leagues, but the one league I was hoping to get to that I had solely Adams in, I fell short, which I was a little peeved about because he was certain that he was going to lose in that one. And, it was unfortunate. The time that I needed Adams to have, 25 targets, he only had 4 targets and he caught all 4 of them. But I think, the silver lining in all this is Jimmy Garoppolo is, finally getting others involved. Jacoby Myers led the team with 7 receptions off of 10 targets. Adams followed with 4 receptions. You had Jacobs with 3 receptions. Even Michael Mayer, our rookie tight end, had 2 receptions off of 3 targets. We even had Hunter Winfrow's sighting. He had run 1 reception. Austin Hooper is in here as well. Amir Abdul was in here. So there was some receivers, some pretty good distribution of the ball. Granted, still the sole focus was on Myers, Adams, and Jacobs. No one really else. And in my opinion, I'd like to see, Mayer get more involved in the passing game and the tight end game, and also Hooper. I really feel like that if we get, that play action rolling and we have some of that tight end movement or, those tight end routes where we're in the middle of the zones or whatnot, I really feel like that would help us offensively. But regardless, though, this was a better distribution of shared targets and all that stuff. So, definitely happy to see that. Also, too, some of the things that worried me about this game that I felt like the Raiders were about to give away, which was it was that 4th down call. And if everyone knows, it was just after the 2-minute warning. And, obviously the Raiders were 4th and 1 and they elected to go for the field goal. I think it was a 52-yarder, and Clarkson unfortunately missed it. Normally, though, he's very accurate with long-distance field goals. And, it was another, I would say, a questionable call by Josh McDaniels. And the reason why is because it was 4th and 1. It was in our it was us in the red zone, and the Packers only had 1 timeout. And had we converted on that 4th and 1, we would have obviously won the game because the Packers only had 1 touchdown. We could have just ran the ball out, ran the timeout, and it would have been, it had just been a clock management game. But the Raiders elected to go for the field goal. Now, had they converted on the field goal, they still would have only been up by 7 points. So the Packers just needed a touchdown, extra point, maybe pushed it to overtime if that was the case. Could also have gone for 2 to steal the game.